Greetings, this is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgic Catholic, with yet another Isaac Asimov short story. And this one, once again, is contained in the pages Asimov on Laborers Love Law. Well, that's not what it is. That's probably an article of his. But it does mention, at the very end, last word, opinion, Isaac Asimov. The page is 146, which is, not counting the cover, literally the last page of the magazine. Now, this one was a little tricky to find. Reason being is that the last word in these magazines tend to be like editorial article sorts of things. And this seems so presented. And it even said opinion up there in the table of contents. And it just has a title very softly here, Strike, with an exclamation point. That is the name of the story. Because in fact, it is a story and not a commentary or an editorial or any of the usual sorts of things. So it takes a little discovery. It is contained in the January 1979 issue of Omni. And it has an incredibly curious piece of artwork. I kind of like this artwork. It looks like some sculpture of Abraham Lincoln, and the sign says "City Workers on Strike." Cool. And that basically is what the story is. The doctors went on strike, and apparently mysterious deaths went down. And then it ends that little paragraph area, and it says, similar events, the actuality of which we cannot guarantee, can be discovered by an assiduous combing of small town newspapers. So in Knothole, Tennessee, not like Knothole, Tennessee. I guess if you got pine wood, you got lots of knothole, these little dark spots on the wood because it's where that branch was stuck out of the plant. Anyway, you've got knotholes, even if it's not actually a hole. Okay, Knothole, Tennessee, June 25. They decided to have a police strike. And crime went down. Oh, wow. Let's see, the crime rate is way down. We get indoors right after sunset. That way, there's no mugging. And with all of us right here with our baseball bats and switchblades. Interesting. No guns. There are no break-ins, and that means you, Buster. I don't care if you do say you're a reporter, just stay on your side of the door. Spike, jailbait, jail's G-A-O-L, like they say in England, jailbait. Three-time loser agrees. The police strike has eliminated strolling beneath the stars. It deprives the citizen of beauty. It deprives us of their skulls or wallets, whichever is thicker. I like that. Cute. Yeah, police go on strike. Crime goes down? No. There's a rationale, because everybody's huddled in their houses and afraid to go anywhere. Now, why do I hear a faint motif of his, what was it? Claustrophilia of Isaac Asimov. He likes being inside enclosed spaces. So we think that seems perfectly reasonable to him. So, of course, now that we've seen police departments not so much just strike to get laid off, now we're seeing what that does, and it's not so funny now. Okay. And then there's Hardbit, Vermont. There's a good name, Hardbit. July 18th. The town of Hardbit has not seen a piece of mail move. So the post office apparently is shut down in Hardbit. Veterans of the Lebanese occupation of 1958. I have no idea what that's about. That's not a strike. We just don't work on holidays, and then they just every single day is Veterans Day. The divorce rate is down. because apparently hard-bit lawyers are depressed. Let me see here. The American husband and the American floozy are being deprived of their constitutional right to write indiscreet letters for wives to find. Obviously, this is in the day of snail mail. San Juan de los Roundup, California. 10 weeks after the start of school, school goes on strike. All the teachers and everybody else. There's a cute line here. I really like this. And it says here, 10 weeks after the start of school, there's no start of school as the teachers remain stubbornly on the picket line despite the offer to raise their salaries to the janitorial level. Well, now, school janitors probably are somewhat well paid because that's kind of kids can be kind of disgusting in their messes. They drop and throw food all over the place, bubble gum. You gotta pry off the concrete or the sidewalk, on the floors and walls and everywhere else. School janitors have to do some, and the bathrooms. Oh, school janitors is probably some of the most disgusting work of almost anybody alive. But still, the teachers should have also be well paid, of course. But reading this made me think of something that I hadn't thought of in a long time. Of all the schools I went to, all of which I'm sure had janitors, or maybe even in some cases janitorial staffs even, I only remember the name of the janitor of the first school I attended from kindergarten to somewhere in third grade. And his name was Mr. Weber. And the reason I remember is that he was kind of popular with the kids. You see, we would kick the ball on the roof of the school, and he was the guy who'd go up and get the balls. We could kick the balls up there. So, made me think of Billy, who could kick the ball very impressively. He wasn't malicious, and usually when he's kicking the ball, he's kicking away from the school because the kickball diamond was arranged such that if you're, where the batter, if it had been baseball, but the kicker as kickball, it's like baseball because you kick the ball anyway, was positioned so that you're facing away from the building. So far more likely when he kicks the ball, it simply leaves the schoolyard, way over the whole playground, over the fence surrounding the school, and out into the street, and probably into the yards of the houses at the far side of the street, or maybe even a block or two beyond. This kid could kick a ball unbelievably. From our standpoint, we would have thought he could kick it into orbit if we had known what an orbit was at the time. But if he wanted to put it on a ball on the roof, he would do that. He could do that too. But many others of us could put the ball up there too. And Weber just patiently went up time and time again and retrieved that for us. So he was a good person and very popular. And we all celebrated Mr. Weber because he was such a nice, good guy. All right, so I just had to share that little personal anecdote. Okay, meanwhile, juvenile crime dropped. I don't know how their education went. Well, we had a chance to see what happens when we kind of had school. But I've talked about this in previous segments where a child here in one of his stories has an actual mechanical or computerized teacher to do the teaching at home. And and they thought, well, the fun we had back when we used to all sit in one room and all its kids would be together, and we could interact with each other and with a living flesh and blood teacher, and there'd be recess, and it was a lot of fun. Oh, that was all the fun they had. That was the title of the story, and I reviewed that quite a ways back now. Then finally, North Nowhere, North Dakota, and it'll be a South Nowhere, South Dakota. I like these town names. Carrier pigeons from South Nowhere, South Dakota, inform us that the newspapers went on strike. Now, again, there could be suddenly people got psychologically a lot healthier, and I think there's something to be said for that borders on the truly prophetic. This is a truly good story of his. Absolutely worthy of considerable recognition. I rate it up there with some of his very best stories, with Nightfall and The Last Question and Profession, and yeah, even The Fun They Had was a pretty good story. Um, and this is up in that caliber, in my opinion. It's great. It's a biting criticism of stuff, but it's also clever. And as we get to the end about the newspapers, it becomes positively prophetic. I'll leave it at that. It's great. It's worth it. Now, here's the bad news. That story has not been collected in any of its usual collections. It did get republished one place into this little collection from the same publisher, The Best of Omni Science Fiction #4, and it has him listed in there. I didn't put his name on the cover, but it does feature the story. At least the table of contents will list it, I think. Orson Scott Wells. I have a rather amusing story called Rubber Soul, which is about what if John Lennon were resurrected years later and the rest of the Beatles are still around. And that's kind of an interesting notion. So then you get to the Asimov story. That's what we're really concerned with here. And there we go. 131, Strike by Isaac Asimov. Down at the very bottom. Strike by Isaac Asimov. 131, that's all. Just list it. And you go in 131. And actually, it's all treated as this little sidebar thing. The whole story. It's a very short, thick read. But it's all there. It's all the same, as far as I can tell. And all you're missing is that nice little artistic graphic of Abraham Lincoln and the strike sign. And that's about it. And yeah. That was also how I was able to recognize, because I actually had to get this, and then I could, from looking at the story here, now clearly identified as fiction, I could then from there go back to the issue of Omni and discover that the fiction had been mislabeled as opinion or editorial or whatever. So it was kind of helpful. Unfortunately, that magazine and this collection of compendium of their fiction, early fiction, and already the 4th magazine of it, quite literally are the only places this really good story have seen publication. I think I can categorize this as one of his rarities. So I almost hesitate to begrudge you, the listener, my summary of the last part with the newspaper strike, but believe me when I say it's prophetic, I've probably given 80% of it away already. Thanks for listening.